Welcome to the High Performance Disciple podcast. My name is Gareth Morgan, and my goal is to help you close the gap between your God-given potential and your daily performance. What I do is I explore the explosive combination of timeless spiritual principles and high performance practices that will enable you to take control, to be courageous, and to release the greatness that is in you. This conversation is designed to help high achieving, high impact leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, and pioneers turn fear into faith, confusion into clarity, frustration into focus, and stress into strategy. If you enjoy what you hear, I would love for you to like it, to subscribe, to comment, and share it with others that you believe in. Here's today's conversation. Welcome to the High Performance Disciple podcast. I can't wait to share today with you what I think is a really challenging message that I think could help you deal on a daily basis with the emotions that we feel when encountering resistance. You've probably already experienced it today. You may even be in a moment right now where there's a feeling of resistance. Maybe it's a circumstance or a challenge that you're facing. Maybe it's something you know you've got to do that you don't like doing, or maybe it creates some anxiety or fear. Maybe there's a lack of confidence, and therefore whenever we have a lack of confidence, things just feel heavier and tougher. And so how do we deal with that? How do we manage that resistance? And you know, as human beings, we naturally feel like running from resistance. We don't wake up each morning and think, you know, today I'm going to run into resistance. I'm going to face and focus on things that are going to challenge me. Naturally, we run towards the nice to-dos rather than the need to-dos. But as a champion, as someone who is a high performer, we need to be the kind of people who understand that resistance is what we run towards rather than what we run away from. We've got to understand and learn how in those moments when our emotions are leading us away from resistance, how we can frame that moment and adopt a strategy that switches us from that default setting of running away to running toward. Because resistance leads to strength, which leads to growth. And you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast because you want to grow. You want to bring the best version of yourself to what truly matters most. You want to tap into that potential that you know you carry. And, you know, certainly if you have a faith, then you'll not only feel that that's something you want to do, you'll also carry a sense of responsibility. That's something that you should do. And so how do we use our emotions rather than be used by them? How do we embrace resistance so that it produces strength and growth, rather than allowing resistance to cause weakness and causing us to diminish and to grow smaller? So as with all the podcast episodes that I'm doing on the High Performance Disciple podcast, I'm looking at the spiritual principles through the life of Jesus and how we can combine those with high performance practices that have an explosive result. Because when you combine them together, they truly produce the results that we're after. And so we're going to go and look at a particular dialogue that Jesus had with his disciples. And of course, the whole purpose of the High Performance Disciple podcast is that, you know, the way that we unlock the best in us is to try and be the kind of person that others want to imitate. When we suddenly realize that others are looking to us as an influence, it puts that greater demand on us to bring the best version of ourselves. If we're just doing it for ourselves, then the demand is less. But as soon as we realize maybe our children, maybe our team, maybe our company, our business, we suddenly realize there's a generation coming up behind us that's looking to us and are going to imitate us, then that puts a responsibility and a demand on us to learn how to model what high performance looks like. And I think how we handle our emotions through resisting circumstances or circumstances that are challenging and tough is absolutely critical, because people are watching more than we realize. So Jesus in John chapter 15, he reveals one of his I am statements. Now that's the first point that I think is really important for us to focus on. Whenever we're going through a challenging situation, our natural response is, how am I going to get through this? What do I need to do next? So it's very much how and what led. But one of the first high performance practices that we need to adopt is we need to ask, who am I going to be right now? The lens through which we look at life, through which we look at the future, through which we look at others, the lens is through our beliefs, and our beliefs are who we believe we are in that moment. And that's the critical question. Because if I don't have clarity of who I am, then the assumption of who I am is going to be based upon what I'm facing. So if the challenge is great and the opposition is great and the resistance is tough, then and I'm not clear on who I am, I'm going to maybe allow that to dictate to me how I see myself. We've been looking at previous episodes of David and Goliath, the difference between David and his brothers and David and the rest of the nation, who were singing songs of victory but weren't following that through with action against Goliath, was that they had an underlying fear because they had a clearer perspective on who this giant was than who they were. And they saw themselves as unqualified and not enough to be able to take on that giant. David, however, had a clarity of identity. So my question number one is this: the way we handle resistance and challenge is we have to ask, who am I going to be? Jesus reveals, I am the true vine. And that lens through which he saw himself enabled him to understand what his role was to be. When he faced challenging circumstances, when he faced moments where there was a gap and there was lack or there needed to be some intervention, he wasn't thinking, oh my word, what I'm going to do here. He looked through who he was. He realized in our identity, our intrinsic design in our identity is that we are a solution to a problem. Therefore, problems actually aren't things that we run away from. They're things that we run toward. The resistance of a challenge is an opportunity for our identity to truly be outworked. So the picture here that we have is that Jesus says, I'm the true vine. So picture with me this vine. Now, you may not have actually seen a vine in real life before. You can Google it and you'll see a picture of, not a tall plant. It's more kind of a plant that works along a set structure that is put in place, and the vine branches make their way along the set structure of either rope or wooden bars that are laid across, and the vine will start to grow along that structure. And the picture here is that Jesus is this vine. He's a source. Okay, he's a source. And then the story goes on to share that Jesus says, I am the vine and you are the branches. And that's the first part of this passage. And he says that the Father is the gardener. So Jesus is the source of life, and the Father is the gardener. So there's these two roles. There's the source, which generates clarity, and then there is this overriding figure called God, who is orchestrating events for the benefit of the vine and the branches. And in this analogy, we are the branches. So we're the branches, Jesus is the vine, God is the gardener. So there's this story taking place. Now, the job of the gardener is to cultivate this vine. In other words, create an environment where growth is inevitable. And that's the thing with anything that has natural life in it. Growth is inevitable. It just needs an environment to allow that growth to be released. Your life has growth inevitably that is trying to make its way out. What we've got to find is anything that is a barrier to that growth. And that's the heart of what Jesus is about to teach us. Because he's about to reveal that actually moments of resistance in our lives that we face are not there to convince us that we can't, that we haven't, that we won't, that we haven't got what it takes. Actually, completely the opposite. They are there to remove the beliefs that we have incorrectly adopted. And in this passage, Jesus talks about that the Father, the gardener, cuts off every branch that does not bear fruit. In other words, every moment of resistance creates an awareness, maybe of a belief that we carry that is working against us rather than for us. Think about it. If in that moment of challenge that you're facing even right now, maybe you're struggling to break through to the next level, maybe there is quite literally opposition, maybe in the form of people or a set of circumstances, in that moment, you have to re-clarify or learn for the first time who you are going to be in that moment and in that situation. Again, if you have a faith and you have a faith in Christ, then of course we find our identity in him. So anything that we have seen Christ do and we witness him do in the Bible, then it is revealed to us that we are able to do all of those things through Christ who strengthens us. In other words, we get to adopt the same beliefs that he had and therefore outwork the same outcomes. If you don't have a faith, then it's about saying, okay, right, well, what is going to be the structure of what I believe about myself? And every time I face resistance, I get to generate fresh clarity on that. Rather than saying, how am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? If I've got this potential in me to grow and to become, then the challenge in me is provoking that to rise to the surface. It's not convincing me that it's not there. It's provoking, it's irritating the future me out of me. So this is where now we can start to adopt some additional practices, because it's not just about framing the picture correctly when we're facing the resistance. So, okay, there's a father here, there's a gardener who is orchestrating and cultivating a situation where he wants to bring something out of me. But there's also some practices that we can adopt. And one of those things is to look for a conversation that cuts. A conversation that cuts. What do you mean, Gareth? Well, if the process that is required is a cutting away of beliefs that are forming barriers, preventing growth, then I need somebody to help me identify what those barriers are. It's what I do. I'm a coach. I ask questions, and the purpose of asking questions constantly with people is because I want the barriers to surface. I want to see which of the branches, because in this analogy, it says that we are the branches, but even the branches have branches. So Gareth is a branch, and Gareth has branches. In other words, those branches are beliefs. So my beliefs are either working for me or against me. There's no neutral belief. In the picture of the vine, a branch is either consuming or producing. A branch will consume the nutrients, the water, the sunlight, or it will take that and convert it into fruit. So it's either consuming or producing. What belief do you have right now that is consuming and it's not producing? That's why we need circumstances that are challenging to highlight what they are. Challenging circumstances get our attention. When everything's going well and great, we often don't go asking the questions, well, what are my limiting beliefs? It's usually the challenging circumstance that highlights and creates a hunger to go in search of what those limiting beliefs are. But having somebody to journey with me who can ask questions that cause discomfort, but with the purpose of dealing with those barriers and those branches that are preventing growth and preventing fruit And fruit are the outcomes or results that we're trying to see. And so let me ask you a question. Who can you have conversations with that can help you cut off those beliefs that aren't producing fruit? It's one of the reasons why in my books, The Winning Keys, Winning Conversation, The Winning Motivation, I purposely create evaluation right throughout all of the books, because evaluation is about asking questions that cause me to identify where the barriers are in me. And so going through a process, reading a book with somebody such as one of my books, but there are other books out there that can help you evaluate what are those limiting beliefs. And doing that with somebody else who can maybe help identify where there are some blind spots. Again, it's high performance practice. Evaluation sometimes doesn't feel like it's productive, but it's essential to produce the next level of results that you and I are looking for. And what's the end goal? Well, the end goal finally is that ultimately we need to cut away those beliefs to produce the fruit. What is the fruit? The fruit are the wow moments. Wow moments. Experiences that people have when they interact with you that differentiate you from other people. That set you apart. That cause people to realize there's a quality difference in what you are bringing to the world, bringing to your industry, bringing to your sector. And the quality of people's experience of you, of the fruit, comes down to the root. The quality of your what you produce, whether it's a manufactured good, whether it's a service, whether it's a performance, all comes down to those beliefs. So that's why resistance is important. Because resistance is helping us to take care of the vine, to deal with the beliefs that we've got that are quite literally shaping our results. So I want to encourage you. Don't run from resistance, run into it. But run into it knowing that that resistance is working for you and that you can adopt some of these practices of clarifying your identity. Not how am I going to do this, what am I going to do, but who do I need to be right now? Frame it correctly. What conversations am I having that are going to help me cut away these barriers of belief that I've got? Because there are wow moments that people need to experience, will experience. But I need to be committed, not complacent, committed to dealing with those limiting beliefs. So I want to encourage you, there is so much to come from you that the world has not yet seen. But we have got to embrace the path of resistance that is going to help us deal with those barriers of belief. I know you've got it in you. Come on, let us take control. Let us be courageous. Let's release that greatness. I hope today's episode was helpful to you. You can get more by subscribing to my channel, and I have more content and tools that can help you on your journey if you'd like to head over to garethmorgan.tv. Remember, today and every day you are a champion, and there is more in you than you think.